Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, the second package of the tax reform law hurdles the House of Representatives.
House Bill number 80883 as having been approved on third reading.
But will it have the same fate at the Senate?
So many commitments, so many things that they told us which did not pan out. They should not be surprised if senators have reservations about Train 2.
Also, as prices of goods continue to spike,
ngayon lang ako nakaranas ng ganito. Talagang pahirap na pahirap ang buhay.
Nahihirapan po kasi lahat po nagmamahalal.
A lawmaker says taxes on fuel products should be suspended.
Yun yung pinaka-simple, pinakamadaling gawin na pinakamalaki yung impact sa merkado.
Senator Bam Aquino joins us live. And later, traffic? No problem. Flying taxis are coming your way. That's for today's In Focus. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. Heeding the President's call, the House of Representatives approves the second package of the tax reform law on third and final reading. But the question remains on whether or not the bill will also hurdle the Senate after some senators expressed concerns on the implementation of the tax reform law's first package. Also, some lawmakers are pushing for the removal or suspension of excise tax on fuel to address inflation woes. And is there a brewing plot to oust the president in October? Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Senator Bam Aquino. Senator, welcome again to the show.
Thank you,
Thank
Pinky.
you for your time, sir.
Can we talk about the flying taxis instead?
Later. You're going to stay for that. Alamin natin magkano yan. Senator, the last time you guested here, we already talked about this bawas presyo bill.
Yes.
So, ibig sabihin po nito, you want excise taxes suspended if the average inflation exceeds or surpasses. Sige, sir.
If it exceeds the target set by the central bank, which is 4%, pero we're way past that already, Pinky. The last time we spoke, I think we were maybe a little bit above 4, 5.7. Now we're at 6.4%. So lampas-lampas na talaga to dun sa target ng Bangko Sentral. Kada buwan, sinasabi ng DOF, bababa ito, magdo-normalize, and yet we're all surprised with even higher inflation rates. So the answers are staring us in the face already. Sa Tagalog, nasa harap na ng ilong mo, ayaw mo lang talagang tukuyin yung bullseye. And yesterday, we had the Department of Agriculture Secretary Piñol, saying that it is the price of gasoline, diesel, fuel that's pushing prices up. So, it's there. Nandyan na. Hindi naman to rocket science. Nandyan na yung sagot. I think it's really time that we work together to suspend the increases in January and roll back all of the increases on fuel products this 2018.
So what you mean, Senator, is the first Train 1 has 3 years of increase in excise taxes.
Yes.
Nandito pa lang tayo sa first phase.
Well, first round pa lang. Sabi ko, second round, baka knockout na tayong lahat dito.
Kasi 2 pesos next year.
2 pesos next year. May third round pa yan in 2020.
So
And
you want the first one already suspended?
we want that suspended primarily because none of the social mitigating measures in the train law have been implemented properly.
Such as?
The unconditional cash transfer is still not distributed to 10 million families. Yung Pantawid Pasada program is just being distributed this month. In September, it should have been done in January. And there are provisions in the law. For example, may nakalagay dyan, may diskwento sa NFA rice for the bottom 10 million families. That's not being implemented at all.
Why?
They're not
there's no
implementing
NFA
it.
rice.
Maybe because there's no NFA rice. So, makikita natin, marami talagang deficiencies in the law itself, especially when it comes to the social mitigating measures.
So I just want to again talk about this because you are one of 4 senators who did not vote for the train.
Yes.
Okay? So, ang ibig niyo hong sabihin na kapag it surpasses inflation, paano? Let's put the target inflation, rather the 2018 monthly inflation rates. In January, you have 3.4. Okay pa, sir. February, 3.8. March, 4.3. April 4.5, May 4.6, June dito na tayo sa 5.2. What do you mean by 3 consecutive months that it surpasses the average inflation?
Well, if you look at the figures that you have there, the third month was May. May was also when we filed the bawas presyo bill, That's 3 months that we've surpassed our target inflation of 4%.
You mean from March?
So,
March, April,
clearly,
May, tama ho ba?
From March to May is 3 months, no? 3 consecutive months where we breached 4%. Clearly, meron nang nangyayari sa merkado, no? And clearly, a lot of the assumptions and computations of the Department of Finance didn't come to pass. Sumobra. Now, we don't even have to go back to 2017 when they were pushing this bill in the Senate. Let's just look at what's happening now. The price of crude has gone up. Nobody is contesting that. A lot of people are saying, including myself, this is the main reason why prices are going up. It's also the main revenue-generating measure in the train law. So lahat yan, babalik at babalik dun sa pagtaas ng presyo ng crudo sa merkado.
But
Now, the question is this, Pinky. Is it still correct? Tama pa ba na habang pataas ng pataas ito, dito tayo kumukuha ng revenue? Ito yung nagpapahirap sa mga tao at ito rin yung kinukuhanan ng gobyerno. So that in itself is already a question, no? Should government be getting so much revenue on an aspect or on fuel which is the one driving prices up? Parang yun palang natanong ang sagot dyan, syempre hindi.
For obvious reasons, sir, because ayaw mo na nga to from day one, kaya nga you voted no for the train, among other things. So, if prices or excise taxes were suspended, dun sa number 1 pa lang, sa phase 1 or round 1, do you have any idea or computation how this will reduce the prices of basic commodities, sir?
Well, it will indirectly reduce it, no? It will directly reduce the price of gasoline, diesel, and kerosene, but it will indirectly reduce all of these prices in the market because all of them use transportation expenses or use fuel, no? Now, in one of the hearings in the Committee on Economic Affairs, the DOF at that point said they didn't compute the indirect taxes. Later on, they would backtrack, no, and say that they did. But in that hearing, sabi nila, yung binanggit nilang 0.4 to 0.7 na pag-akyat is just the effect of the direct prices of fuel. So yung indirect, hindi pa nga daw nako-compute. Later on, they'd write a letter saying na that's not the case. But if you look at it, a lot of the increases in inflation is the indirect. Ano yung epekto niya dun sa ibang mga produkto. And I think that's the one that's really troublesome for our people. Yung talagang mahirap sa mga tao, itong pagtaas ng pagkain, pagtaas ng iba't ibang mga produkto, this is the one that's really heavy on the shoulders of our countrymen.
Dahil, sabi nga nila, tagos sa buto.
Tagos sa
diba?
buto. Pinky, I was in Zamboanga last week, no? And in Zamboanga, of course, 3 weeks ago, umabot ng 70 plus yung presyo ng commercial rice per kilo, no? In that consultation, yung katabi kong tricycle driver, sabi niya, Senator, 4 po kami sa aming pamilya, pinaghahatian namin kalahating kilo ng bigas kada araw. So half a kilo of rice for 4 people because the prices are just too high. Now, it's incumbent upon government, if we're truly responsive, kung talagang may malasakit tayo sa tao, we will move heaven and earth to make sure that these prices will not keep on going up.
So let's look at some of the basic commodities. We have retail prices of selected commodities in NCR. Kasi when we even talk about inflation, sir, in NCR, it's at 7%. Hindi ho ba? So, rice, nag-umpisa na tayo. In 2017, ang isang kilo ng rice is 37. Now it's 45. But let's go back to what Secretary Manny Piñol said that bababa na ang presyo. But he also said, hindi ho ba yesterday na hindi bababa? Don't expect it to be lower than 40 pesos.
Well, I don't know. The only way that the price of rice will go back down is if there's sufficient NFA rice in the market. And again, we've talked about this. Ilang buwan na rin po ito na pinag-uusapan. Yung presyo ng commercial rice, tataas yan kung walang steady supply ng NFA rice. Kung yung supply mo ng NFA rice, nirarasyon pa rin, pumipila pa rin yung mga tao para dito, hindi pa rin bababa yung presyo ng commercial rice. NFA needs to be there constantly, steadily, and hindi nirarasyon yung kanilang stocks.
So what's happening, Senator,
okay, so
with NFA, the
for
NFA
18
Council,
months,
the Department of Agriculture?
So lahat to, this is all the product of neglect for over a year and a half. No? When we had that hearing in March of this year, it was already a year and a half that the NFA was not able to fill up their buffer stock.
But there is a reason there, sir.
Yung reason, nag-aaway sila ng NFA Council. That's not a good reason kasi sila rin lang yun eh.
Ibig ko sabihin, kung pakikinggan po natin ng NFA, they said they already asked to is it import, to get so many metric tons of rice, that it was not signed by the NFA Council. I think they asked November of last year, na-sign lang May.
Pinky,
or April,
everyone
di
there
ba
is an appointee of the president. Okay, everyone there is in the administration. So 1.5 years yan na walang leadership sa issue na ito, pinalampas, naubos yung kanilang stock, tumaas yung presyo ng commercial rice. Now, in Zamboanga, the people there said 5 months na walang NFA rice sa palengke. That's why umabot yun ng 70 plus per kilo. Now, what happened? Nagkagipitan na, nag-import. And finally, nag-import na sa ating bansa. Ano naman nangyari? Hindi naman na-distribute ng maayos, kaya nagkabukbuk. So, every step of the way, there's some form of mismanagement.
But who's to blame for that?
Obviously, the NFA. No, we have to replace the NFA leadership already. And this is something we've
So you're
called on the
talking about
president to do.
Jason Aquino, sir?
Yes, in March of this year. That's 6 months ago.
But if you're saying that the NFA and the NFA Council are not speaking as one or nag-aaway sila, why are you just choosing the NFA
Because
head
tinanggal
to
na si
resign?
Ibasco eh.
Sa
So,
council.
di ba, tanggalin na lang lahat, maglagay tayo ng mga taong kayang gawin yung trabaho nila. And I think that has been the call from the start of 2018. By March 2018, more than 18 months na yun na hindi sila nagre-replenish ng stocks nila. Now, maraming debate dyan. Sinasabi nila, ayaw magbenta ng magsasaka sa kanila. Some senators, of course, said, then why don't you raise the price by 1 peso or 2 pesos? There were so many solutions being suggested, but the solution that they did was not to have a solution at all.
Since we're talking about rice, are you for rice tariffication?
Yes, as long as the programs are there for our farmers. Because kung bibiglain mo yan, Pinky, tama nga, papasok yung murang bigas at mahalaga yon sa taong bayan. Pero kung di naman handa yung programa para sa farmers natin, magugutom naman 2 million families. So, for this to happen, there's a precondition which should be happening now, which is to prepare all of our 2 million farmers or at least the farmers who are in the most vulnerable provinces and make sure may programa para sa kanila, may safety net para sa kanila para hindi sila matamaan negatively nitong tarification.
So you said a while ago that ang nakikita niyo dapat mag-resign is the NFA head, which is Jason Aquino. What about the economic managers? Because there are some lawmakers calling for the resignation
true.
of the economic
Well,
managers. What do you have to say to
Ako,
them?
there's still enough time, I think, to course correct here. And the bawas presyo bill, that's one
Course
way
correct.
to course correct. No? I think there's parang ayaw nilang aminin na itong problema natin sa presyo, malaking bagay dito yung presyo ng crudo. No? And they'll blame the world prices on this. But if you look at the train law, the main aspect of train 1, or the main revenue generating measure of train 1 is the excise taxes.
tax on petroleum
So,
products.
magdadagdag ka sa isang bagay na patuloy na tumataas. And, to borrow the metaphor of one of the women we spoke to in Barangay Holy Spirit in Quezon City last March, sabi niya, Senator Bam, nalulunod na kami sa presyo ng bilihin. Ano yung ibibigay mo sa isang taong nalulunod? 'Di ba? Hindi mo siya bibigyan ng hollow block para mas malunod pa siya. Bibigyan mo ng salbabida. So, government needs to work together to find a way to address the higher prices of fuel in the market, hindi nadadagdagan pa niya. At magdadagdag pa siya in January at magdadagdag pa siya sa 2020. So it doesn't make any sense anymore, Pinky. I think it's really incumbent that we find a way to suspend the increases in January and to roll back all of the increases that we put in ngayong 2018.
All right, this is the source on CNN Philippines. Still to come, an Oust Duterte movement in October. Senator Bam Aquino shares his thoughts after the break. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today is Senator Bam Aquino. So I was asking you during the break, sir, what kind of support are you getting from your co-senators?
Well, sa minority, definitely there's full support there. Sa majority, there's interest, but I wouldn't say it's really full support yet. I'm up to deliver another privilege speech this week or next week regarding this topic. So hopefully we can convince more of our colleagues to support the bill.
But if you're saying that it's not rocket science, sir, why are your co-senators not supporting you?
You ask them. Tanong mo sa kanila, no? But palagay ko kasi habang palapit yung Enero, maghahanap tayo ng legal na paraan para masuspend yung excise taxes.
How?
Through a law. The only way that you can really suspend it is through a law.
Wala nang iba.
And right now, the Bawas Presyo Bill is the only law filed in the Senate regarding the suspension of the excise taxes. So, my prediction is, as people become more vocal about the current situation, habang mas pinapahiwatig nila yung totoong sitwasyon ng mga tao, mas magiging realidad itong pag-suspend natin ng excise taxes sa Enero.
What about mitigating measures that government is implementing? They will distribute 4.6 million sacks of rice, importation of agricultural products. Sir, would that help
It will help
stem.
prices. But may mga unintended consequences rin yan. No? I think if you remember,
Hindi
there
ibig
was a
sabihin, sir,
time...
baka would that be a better choice possibly for government? Government may just implement that instead of
Well,
doing
may unintended
suspending
consequence
the
kasi
excise
yan eh.
taxes.
Pag binaba mo yung tariff sa imported meat and fish, you're also hurting your local farmers and fishermen. So, everything has you have to balance a lot of things. No? Laging may kapalit yan. And right now, if you look at the most recent intervention of government, it was trade. Because that was just this year. So, ito yung how do I say it, yung the latest development in the taxes for fuel. So, palagay ko rin, ito rin yung pinakamadaling bawiin. No?
So, meron ho kayong counterpart. Well, si Congressman Miro Quimbo also yesterday said that they are going to pass a measure, or they have passed a measure on suspending the excise tax
They
also
filed,
on
I think...
diesel and kerosene.
Yes, they filed last week. I'm quite happy that our congressional
Meron na.
friends have filed as well. And I hope that this will be given enough time and effort also at Congress.
Okay, we're talking about the House of Representatives. Trabajo passed on third and final reading. Senator, what's it like in the Senate?
Well, maganda nga na ginawa nilang trabaho yung pangalan ng Train 2 kasi yun talaga yung mapoproblema at mapeperwisyo dito sa batas na to, no?
So hindi madadagdagan ng trabaho, mawawalan ng
Mawawalan
trabaho?
tayo ng trabaho dito. Jobs are at risk, no? What industries have come out and said that they have problems with this law? You have the Japanese Chamber of Commerce, you have the BPO industry, you have the semiconductors industry. All told, this is about 1 million plus. Maybe aabot yun ng 2 milyong trabaho, no? Na natatakot yung mga industriyang yan na dahil sa pagtanggal ng insentibo, baka maperwisyo yung kanilang mga investors. Now, every single job for every single Filipino family is important. Mahalaga yun. Yun yung pinanghahawakan ng bawat pamilyang
Every
Pilipino.
single job for every single one of us is important.
It's important, but more so for those who are working in these companies, no? So, ito mahalaga. Hindi pwedeng mabaliwala yung kanilang sitwasyon. Hindi pwedeng i-risk mo yung security ng mga pamilyang ito. Now, even if it's just a 5% downturn or a 10% downturn, sabihin mo ng BPO industry. I spoke to them this week, no? I spoke at one of their meetings. It's 1.3 million direct jobs. Indirectly, it's 3.8 million indirect jobs. So, aabot kaya ng 4-5 million jobs dito. Even if you say it's a 10% downturn, you're talking about 13,000 jobs. No, 10% is 130,000 jobs. 5% is half of that, 65,000 jobs. Now, the nature of a call center is that marami silang trabaho in specific areas. You look at a city, Dumaguete for example, may burgeoning call center industry doon. Kung may 2 kumpanya, magsara doon, that's 2,000 jobs there.
Yeah.
Now, can you imagine, you're a city, you're a municipality, mawalan ka ng 500 jobs bigla-biglaan. That's going to be so
Laki ng impact
dangerous
nun.
and that's going to be so devastating for that town.
What's the concern or what's the status of this in the Senate? Marami ho ba kayo?
Actually, to be fair, it's not moving in the Senate, no?
Okay.
It's probably at committee level right now. A lot of people, a lot of the senators have said publicly that because of Train 1, parang ang hirap pumunta sa Train 2.
Well, that is true. We've actually interviewed some of them, Senator Mig, Senator Win Gatchalian. Parang sinasabi nga nila, much of what was promised
Didn't come to pass.
did not come
So,
to pass.
using that same logic, baka yung mga ibang mapangako sa Train 2, hindi rin matupad. And if, again, the reverse happens and jobs are lost because of Train 2, even in the first year or two, and we're talking about 10% of big industries. That's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs na mahirap naman po na nilalaro mo lang yung mga trabahong ito.
Are you confident, though, that it's not going to pass the Senate? Is that what you're saying, sir?
No, I'm not saying that. No, of course, that's something for the majority to answer. But many of us, those in the minority and some of those in the majority, I think, will take a stand and say, as is, I don't think that's going to pass as is.
Okay. The President is set to address the country later at 3 p.m. What are your thoughts about what will happen later, or what would you like to hear from the President, Senator?
Masuspend yung excise taxes sa Enero. It's possible,
Okay.
It's possible. I mean, if you look at a lot of the troubles of the administration now, a lot of it is really economic. Nandito yung pagtaas ng presyo ng bigas, pagtaas ng presyo ng mga produkto. Kung meron siyang babangkitin, I'm hoping it will be about economic measures that can solve real problems of real Filipinos, no? At sana unahin na niya yung pagsuspend ng excise taxes ngayong Enero.
All right. Also, the President said that there is this plan to oust him in October. Let's listen exactly to what the President said.
Yan, tatlo yan, bantayan ninyo. Yan yung mag-aos na House Duterte, and it will go into a high gear October, ganun. Bantayan ninyo yan. Kaya yung tatlo na yan, konektado lahat yan. Tatlong yan, bantayan ninyo. Yung yellow, liberals, Trillanes, pati ang Politburo.
You're part of the yellow, you are part of the LP. Are you part of this House Duterte in October,
No,
sir?
alam mo, yung pinakaplano ng oposisyon is really to focus on these economic problems. No, last week, the Vice President had her press con with myself, Congressman Miro, and
Senator Kiko.
And there we talked about how this is what we need to focus on. Ito yung kailangan ng tao eh. Hindi yung smoke and mirrors na ouster na pinag-uusapan na yan na wala namang basehan, hindi yung kay Senator Trillanes yung paghuli sa kanya. Yung hinahanap ng tao ngayon, yung totoong solusyon sa mga problema nila. And all of this, it's all a distraction. Nakakahiya sa taong bayan na hindi natin binibigyan ng tamang oras yung totoong problema nila. And I was hoping that we can just focus on addressing the needs of the people pagdating sa bigas, pagdating sa presyo ng bilihin.
So there
Seriously.
but there is no House Duterte. It's never been talked about, or
No. Honestly.
No.
Everyone in the opposition, at least yung nakakausap ko, definitely, are all looking electorally already. Kung merong protestang
what
mangyayari,
that means is they're looking at
the next year's elections.
midterm elections.
Kung merong protestang mangyayari laban sa administrasyon, it has to be electoral. Because the president was voted democratically into office in 2016. So the way people express themselves now, Pinky, ito yung tingin ko is electorally. Bumoto tayo ng mga nasa oposisyon. Let's put in people who are independent, who won't just follow whatever Malacanang wants, who will fight for what people really need. Now, itong sinasabi niyang oust, it's extra-constitutional. Palagay ko, graduate na tayo dyan eh.
Hindi.
At marami na tayong pinagdaanan ganyan, hindi naman bumuti rin yung bansa. So now I think it's important for people who are questioning the policies of the administration, nagtatanong bakit ba tayo umabot sa gantong klaseng presyo ng bigas at presyo ng bilihin. Lahat ng efforts na yan, kailangan i-address yan electorally. And I think many of us are really looking at next year's elections as a way to take a stand against the administration.
You are, of course, a re-electionist in
Yes.
the midterm elections in 2019, but I think you placed 13, is it 13, sir?
10 to 14.
10 to 14, sorry. So that's 10 to 14. If you are talking about the electorate and possibly an opposition vote
Yes.
against the President Rodrigo Duterte, how do you feel that you're not in the top 5 or medyo nandun kayo sa dulo?
Aabot pa tayo dyan, Pinky. And I think by next year, you will find more opposition members in the top 12. Don't forget, in 2012, there were 2 candidates who weren't in the top 12 in October. That's myself and Senator Poe. Of course, pareho kaming nakapasok. No? So pagdating ng eleksyon, nag-iisip yung mga tao at sinisingil yung administrasyon. That, I think, is the most important part. During midterms, sinisingil yung administrasyon at doon nag-iisip yung mga tao, sino ba yung gusto kong isama dito?
So dito natin malalaman kung masaya pa ang tao o hindi
Yes.
with the present administration.
Yes.
So let's talk about Senator Sonny Trillanes, sir.
Yes, sana nanonood siya. He's there in his office.
Yeah,
Hi,
I
Sonny.
hope he's also watching. The senator is free for now of any arrests because both RTC court said we will look into this, we will hear this. There will be one on Thursday. Also for the viewers, we'd like to tell the viewers just an update on this. And the second one is on Friday. So meron siyang dalawang hearing. Isa sa Thursday na 9 p.m., isa sa Friday at 9 a.m. and the other one on Friday at 9 a.m. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, unang-una, Pinky, there will be a lot of legal questions to be discussed. The Supreme Court, the RTC. Ako, looking at it from a layperson's perspective, just go back to the proclamation. Ano ba yung pinaka-rason ng proklamasyon? Walang application form, hindi nanumpa sa admission of guilt. And within 30 minutes of that proclamation, social media already had the clips of Senator Trillanes providing his application form and swearing an oath.
Hindi humahanap eh.
Wait. A few days after that, you had people who actually accepted these documents saying that they did see the documents. Now, ito yung tanong ko, Pinky. Kung nawala ng isang ahensya, yung papeles mo, sino yung may sala? Diba? Sabi nga sa akin sa Iloilo, Senator Bam, kung mawala yung marriage certificate ko ng City Hall,
Hindi ka nakasal.
single na ba ako ulit? Diba? Or kung mawala daw yung death certificate, mabubuhay ba daw yung patay?
Oo, yun na rin. Nakita ko din yun sa Twitter.
I think it's gotten to a level of absurdity already.
But let me put this in because Attorney Sal Panelo was saying it's really the senator who is supposed to produce this. I know where you're going, sir. Ibig ko lang sabihin, there are 2 arguments
It's not
here.
an argument,
One
Pinky.
is saying,
It's not an
ipakita
argument,
mo,
Pinky.
Senator.
Nagbubulag-bulagan yung isa, at yung isa naman, ginawa yung tamang proseso. Because, again, he would not have an amnesty certificate. Congress and Senate would not be voting on his case kung di sila dumaan sa tamang proseso. So, in the same way, nag-a-apply ka ng driver's license. Ano yung pruweba mo nag-apply ka? May lisensya ka. And he does have his amnesty certificate. Dumaan na tayo dyan. Pag walain ng LTO yan, does that make your driver's license void? Ang mangyayari niyan, papagalitan mo yung nagwala ng records.
Okay, very quickly though, yung pong usurpation of authority ni former Secretary Volz Gasmin dahil siya daw ang nag-grant ng amnesty at hindi si Pangulong Aquino.
Alam mo, all of this is trying to legitimize the faulty proclamation to begin with. Nagkamali sila dun sa proklamasyon kasi akala siguro nila makakalusot yung application tsaka yung non-admission of guilt. Unfortunately, for those who created the proclamation, may video evidence tayo dyan. And people, to be fair, people in the AFP were brave enough to say, actually, nandun po kami noon, natanggap po namin yon. Now they're trying to find other ways to correct it or legitimize it. Now, ang hope ko ito, I'm hoping that people in our institutions will still opt to do the right thing, na hindi magbubulag-bulagan para sa Malacanang. Gagawin pa rin nila yung tama, especially in this case na klarong-klaro naman.
Alright.
No?
Senator Bam Aquino, sir, you are going to the Senate later, but meron pong budget hearing. Budget hearing ho ba, ma'am? Ano, Senate hearing
there's
on
a hearing on the shabu.
the shabu shipment.
The shabu that's being contested kung pumasok nga ba talaga o
Sa
hindi.
bansa.
Again, by both agencies of government, both appointees of the President.
PDEA is what you're talking
PDEA
about
and
also.
Customs.
All right. Senator, maraming salamat po sa inyo.
Thank you, Pinky.
Thank
Salamat.
you. We'll be taking a short break. Ito na po mamaya. You want to see this. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. Time now for today's In Focus here on The Source. Well, will you be interested in traveling by air on a flying taxi? Of course. The problem is, how much is it? Let's watch this. Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.